Welcome to Three Idiots Rambling about a game they really like.
Was that actually the intro?
Yeah, that's how we're doing it here. You don't like it? Get the hell out of here.
Welcome to Dispa Learns to Co.
No, yeah, welcome to Despa Learns to Co, our podcast with a valued guest.
Very esteemed one.
Yes. It's Callum of the General's Gentlemen. Welcome, Callum.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It's been a while that we've actually tried to work this out. So glad to finally have it happening.
We're talking about RTS in general and where the RTS genre is heading, because it's a thing that interests all three of us. Callum, where do you think RTSs are heading? Or how do you feel that the RTS genre is doing now, and where do you think it would be heading in the future?
Okay, so that's a very big question. I think it's interesting to look at where RTS has come now, and I think what we can say is that RTS was a very prominent genre back in the late 90s, early 2000s, when you had like Age of Empires, StarCraft, Warcraft, Command and Conquer. RTS was a really big genre. And over the past 10 or 15 years, it's definitely waned down in popularity and has quite stagnated. And I think that there's definitely an interesting conversation to be had about why that is. So I guess I'll start there. I think you can definitely say that a lot of it has come down to the rise of the console. Consoles have a bigger market share than what they did back in the 90s, at least I think so. And so RTS just doesn't work on console. You do have RTS games that go on consoles, like the original Command and Conquer, StarCraft 64, Halo Wars, but realistically, RTS just don't handle on a console. It's not really suited for it. So I think consoles is one problem.
Well, I mean, it's the controller. Let's admit it. It's the controller.
Yeah, it's not so much the platform as the controller. Yeah, you're right.
And it's not like you can't plug a keyboard and mouse in. It's just that most console users just have that controller and nothing else.
I think you could even take it further than that. I think you can make an argument about the fact that console gamers are typically a bit more casual, and I know it's kind of fun to
typically a bit younger too, usually.
Yeah, younger. You're right, younger. It's more casual, where PCs it's more generally a bit more hardcore, and it doesn't have to be, of course, but I think that RTS itself is a very hardcore genre, so it's no surprise why the hardcore genre RTS, even regardless of controllers, it still doesn't typically go as well on consoles.
Okay, so let's talk about hardcore, right? Because what does it actually mean? I mean, because does hardcore mean like super complex and super hard, or does it mean what does it actually mean? Because I think it can mean,
because I think hardcore is a very it's one of those words that's very open, very ambiguous. But I mean, at least I define hardcore as in the context of gaming as someone that obviously, time is obviously a big part of it. Like someone that spends 5 hours gaming a week probably isn't a hardcore gamer. So I think how much time you spend, but also like how much patience you have in order to learn a game, because a lot of like mobile gaming is obviously the end of the spectrum as far as like hardcore, nobody's going to spend half an hour learning a game on a mobile, whereas on an RTS it takes weeks and months to learn all of a game completely. So I think it's a combination between how much time you spend and how much patience you have in willing to invest yourself into a particular game in terms of learning it.
The mastery curve, right? Where you're a beginner down here, and
for me, myself, I only play one game right now. I play Company of Heroes, and you say it wouldn't be hardcore to play 5 hours a week, but I think I play Company of Heroes approximately 5 hours a week, and that's it. And when I do, I play with Foxhound, and the thing about RTS is I don't know where this is where I don't know what I'm talking about here, but I just think it's interesting that an RTS game is it's actually the only thing I'm playing, right? I don't need any other game. It's like that's
Yeah, and I mean, I wouldn't call you a casual, right? A casual player.
I don't know.
So I think hardcore it doesn't necessarily have to do with how much time per week you spend, but rather that maybe how much time you've spent on getting good at it, right? Because I think with casual games, a lot of them, well, they kind of have to not be that difficult to master, right? Because otherwise, I guess that casual players lose their patience quicker or attention, right? So I think most PC games or most complex games, so they take longer to master, and I think that's one of the things that make a game hardcore.
Yeah, you could make the argument that RTS games are like a game that is disappearing also because it's just a game that naturally takes time to master, and that's not the direction which the industry is moving. Saying that, what I want to say with my personal angle is just that it's not that I play Company of Heroes or any other game a lot, but I have played it I played this for so many years now that it's just you know what I mean? Like it's a game that you can play for ages, for years and years. And I think that's a difference. There's a difference there in RTS games compared to other games.
I think also, even in Company of Heroes, I mean, I don't want to fret too much about the definitions because, again, casual and hardcore are very ambiguous terms.
Yeah.
But I feel like even in Company of Heroes, you can make a distinction between people that do play it hardcore and people that do play it casual. And I think it comes down to the expectation of what you want to get out of it. I think a hardcore gamer is someone that wants to be challenged, someone that wants to improve themselves, someone that finds it satisfying when they outplay their opponents and such. Whereas a casual, it can be more, you have the comp stompers that play versus AI because they like the role play of like being a military commander. They like the aesthetics of Company of Heroes, which is very beautiful. Yeah. So I think it's a very complex issue in terms of casual and hardcore. But I feel like perhaps that's a good point. It's not so much hours; it's more intentions and expectations of gaming that defines if you're a casual or hardcore.
I remember, I don't know if it was an article or. No, actually, I think it was you, Callum. Didn't you do a video about why more girls didn't play at RTS?
I did.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And I think in that video you mentioned that RTS games, well, they didn't really have a lot of cooperative aspects to them, right? I mean, sure, you could play together, but you couldn't really. It wasn't really like.
I'll explain it then just in my video. Yeah.
Okay.
What I was saying is that I feel like RTS has lost a lot of its market share to MOBAs because MOBAs have a lot of the same appeal as RTS, but not. There's a bit of different reasons why as well. But with RTS, it's not a game that involves team play because when you play a 2v2 or a 3v3 in Company of Heroes, you're not really interacting with your teammates. You're really not. You're still interacting with your opponents. You're just doing it alongside or next to your teammates. Yeah. And that's kind of a case with any RTS game. Yeah. But if you look at something like MOBAs or like an MMORPG, you really have to interact and rely upon your teammates. Yeah. So you say you have someone that's a tank in a MOBA, so that they're absorbing all the damage. Then you have like a DPS, the AD carry that's doing all the damage. You have a support that's protecting everyone. You have all these roles, and nobody is self-sufficient. Yeah. So then when you win, when you're successful, you have this combined sense of camaraderie and this value that you have because you worked as part of a team. Yeah. And then it's this really fun social experience where RTS games just don't have that. RTS games are pretty much all about the self-fulfillment of interacting with your opponent and outplaying your opponent.
Yeah. That's a great point. Like, because for me personally, the only reason I play Company of Heroes now, a couple of years, many years later, it's only because I'm playing with Foxhound, right? Like, the only reason is that we interact over microphone and we talk to each other while playing. If I was playing alone, you're completely right. Company of Heroes would feel too much of a, a lonely game, even though I would be playing others and playing with others. The only reason I'm playing is because I'm talking with a teammate and having that kind of direct interaction, but not through the game, right? It's through Skype.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're talking about a personal interaction. I'm talking about a game mechanic,
Yeah,
and that does happen sometimes when you're like, okay, so throw down the smoke barrage, and then I'll flank them, and it's like the nice teamwork. But realistically, you never really do that. It's more just kind of 2 separate 1v1s or 3 separate.
I mean,
1v1s
in Co 1, you with the airborne commander, right, of the US. I think that was actually a really nice teammate commander to use, because you could use airdrop supplies, right? You could airdrop an AT gun or an MG or something.
But
like
it feels
that.
more like a little bit of a gimmick, like the British commander in Company of Heroes 2 that has a truck that can give weapons, right? You can also give weapons to. Yeah. So this also feels like a little bit of a gimmick, right? Okay, I can give you some weapons, but it's not really integral to the game.
Mean, it's more of a like extra stuff that kind of allows you to work together. But that's not really.
It's not into the core. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not really like an integrated.
So I think this is a very good point of where our RTS is heading, or where do they need to head, right? Where do you need to go? I really think they need to go a place where there is more direct team interaction, because that's... Well, or what do you think, Callum?
I think that it's really hard to design an RTS game that will do 1v1s in a compelling nature, but then also do 4v4s in a nature that's really compelling. And I'm not going to talk so much about balance. Like, I think you could argue that you can balance them while it's really hard. But in terms of this really intertwined synergy, I don't think you can really do that. And I don't think you really have to either. I think on the one hand, you're just not really playing to the strengths of the genre. Like, I think if an RTS game is going to be so concerned about having this really intricate team play, then like, why not just make a MOBA? Like, go play a MOBA if that's what you want. But on the other hand, I think that RTS games really have been doing team games wrong forever, and I mean, that's a pretty clickbaity statement, right? But let me explain. And this is
our
also
title
to do
right
with what
there.
I mentioned. Yeah, just like when I mentioned that everyone's been doing med bunkers wrong the entire time. It's my inner YouTuber is just like must clickbait. But in terms of like, if you guys ever played StarCraft 2 Archon mode, I made this argument in the video where in StarCraft 2v2s are awful. Like 2v2s are just a crazy cluster F word of just like spamming units, right? And but what Archon mode does is Archon mode is where you share control. So Archon mode in StarCraft is essentially a 1v1 game, but where you have 2 players per team. So then you have 2 players that share control of a base. You share control of like your production and your unit. So you'll have people that do different roles. Okay, so it's like, all right, Despa, like, you'll be building up workers, you'll be building up structures. Martin, you're going to be like harassing your opponent, you're going to be microing these battles. And then you have this communication is so important, because you really have to communicate who's doing what you should do, why you're going to do it, what's happening. And then at the same time, when you win, you do really have this combined sense of camaraderie. And it gets so heated because you often run over each other, and you often like try to control the same units. But that's like, it's really stressful, but in a really fun way, like in a really interesting way. And I feel like in Company of Heroes, that would be fantastic. Like, could you imagine it's like, all right, I have these 2 Jacksons. I am going to micro the absolute hell out of these 2 Jacksons. Despa, you control the riflemen. Martin, you lay down some mortar barrages. And like, if you're all sharing these units, like, and actually then together you have this combined victory, I think you would have that that team camaraderie and that gratifying victory together that you just don't have in traditional team games.
I think this is a very good idea too. Like if we actually had the discussion, because for example, I am very good at managing resources, right? And Foxhound is terrible at managing resources.
Let's just say I often forget to.
Let's just put it like that, yeah.
To use.
So
use
and
shit.
so it kind of that's kind of where our cooperation is going, right? Like we want to get in on each other's plays and understand what the other play is doing. And yeah, that's actually I didn't know about this co-op mode.
Archon mode.
Yeah, that's
I have heard about it,
Yeah.
and I think it sounds really cool, and I think actually
and easy to make
World
too,
in Con-
right? It's
I
easy.
think actually,
It wouldn't be hard to code.
No.
The
World
problem
in-
that StarCraft 2 has is with Archon mode is not when people play it. So you have very long queue times because you have people playing 1v1s and 2v2s and 3v3s and 4v4s and Archon mode. So like you have to be careful about splitting up the player bases because say your Company Heroes is a very small community. It's already hard to get games, but I think it's certainly a fun idea.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
well, you could. I mean, if the premise is that, okay, it's a team game where your team just splits the control of this space and its units, right? That would mean that the more players you would be in that team game, the more divided you could, the less units you had to manage, right? So I guess that would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think so too.
But actually, World in Conflict, do you know that game?
Yes, that was an excellent example.
They actually did something like that, where in multiplayer, where you had to choose like what
Class
section, what section of the army did you want to control, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, did you want to be support or army or air force or something like that?
It was infantry, tanks, support, and aircraft. Support was like anti-air and artillery.
And obviously that was more of a, that's not quite the same, but it was, it had a whiff of that aspect from Archon, I think.
Yeah, and another example, Dawn of War 2 really tried to do the whole team game thing, because in Dawn of War 2 there's a lot of RPG elements, a lot of MOBA elements even, because you have your heroes, you have abilities, and those abilities do have a lot of synergies. You can revive your opponent's commanders. I don't think Dawn of War 2 works really well in team games just because of the way that the whole melee range dynamic works. It's like the more things you have, the harder it is for melee to really connect. So you could. I don't think that was particularly in an amazing game as far as team games. I absolutely love 1v1s and I do shoutcasting for it, but I don't really enjoy 3v3s. But I can certainly see where they're coming from in terms of there is a lot of potential for synergy because of all of the MOBA RPG mechanics that the different heroes and classes and items and whatnot actually give you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I before we talk specifically about where Company of Heroes the series is heading, I just want to ask Callum, are you seeing potential in RTS in the future, or are you more worried where the genre is going?
Well, the thing that really concerns me is the fact that nobody making RTS games has any clue what they're actually doing. Because and like you laugh, and I don't mean that in an inflammatory way, but like I'm actually serious. Like if you look at any RTS game that's come out in the past 5 years, I mean, what have we had? We've had Deserts of Karak, which was quite a nice game. It had a lot of launch issues, but it was a nice game, right? It's a pretty small community, but I think you can say that's a good game. You have Upward Trading Company, which is a really great innovation on RTS, which of course you did your video about, which did very well. That was a great video. But other than that,
thank you.
Like, you just have so many RTS games that lack any personality, any expertise in terms of like actually making it strategically depth and nuanced, in terms of having fun and intricate units, in terms of really having interesting unit control. You look at things like Grey Goo active
I was
aggression,
just about to mention
8-bit
that.
armies.
Yeah.
I mean, Planetary Annihilation was just like a pretty crappy version of Supreme Commander, and I think what's happened because Blizzard aren't really doing RTS anymore because Blizzard have realized that like, wow, we can make a lot more money doing free-to-play games and microtransactions, and RTS doesn't bode well into microtransactions, which is a whole new subject of its own, which we can talk about later on, I suppose. And then you have Command and Conquer, which doesn't exist anymore because EA have since, when Generals 2 flopped, they then cancelled they cancelled Generals 2. They fired every single dev that was working on the game. They closed down the studio, so EA no longer has any CNC devs at all.
No.
And then you have Petroglyph, which have proven time and time again don't have any experience making good RTS games. Every RTS game they've released has been incredibly mediocre, and they just kind of rely on the whole like, oh, we're ex-Westwood like bandwagon, and it just doesn't deliver. I can't remember. Oh, you got what's the other one, like War Game Airline Battle and Red Dragon.
Yeah, European
Yes.
Escalation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't played those games, but I mean I can see the appeal. They're a very different style of RTS.
So
Okay, about that game, let me say I have played it. I found it
The franchise
incredibly.
Yeah.
I played the first game, European Escalation. I found it incredibly hard to approach.
So
there were so many units, so many stats, and it was very, very. It seemed like, okay, guys, let's just go have a nerdgasm with numbers and stats and shit like that.
So that's also what I see.
And then that'll be our thing. But well, if you really want to play this game, if you're like really a numbers nerd, right? Well, you'll manage to get into it, right? So
that's one trend. I think maybe from where I see it, I think there's 3 trends in RTS, and one of them is this war game trend where you have simulation like strategy, right? It's very nerdy and very hard to get into. And the other trend is this remake trend, like Cossacks 3, Sudden Strike 4, all these games that are getting HD remakes, like driving on the nostalgia of old RTS games. And then there are the third trend that is this innovative but indie thing that's Off-World Trading Company and stuff that's not coming from AAA titles. And that's I haven't really seen so many of these indie games, but I think that's the most interesting trend of these 3.
I feel like my stomach is really like, say something.
Yeah, you don't like.
Because this is the second time you mentioned Off-World Trading Company.
It's such a good game, though.
I love it.
It's amazing.
It's so.
Have you played it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he has played it. Foxhound doesn't like it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan. I mean, it was cool at first, but really like it. I mean, you say it's so innovative. Really? Does it actually?
Like, how is it not innovative?
I mean, what does it actually do that hasn't been seen before?
Okay, all right. So it has an incredibly complicated reactive economy that dictates how you prioritize resources, how you interact with the resources. It's all about economy and nothing at all about units. And it's not in terms of economy of getting the best. It's in terms of like, how can I exploit and manipulate this really nuanced
that's new
system.
You haven't seen that before.
That nothing is like that.
I have,
You're just
actually.
Where did you see that? Hospital Tycoon 3?
Demand and supply. Demand and supply economy, like where you can trade and like buy and sell. I've seen that in plenty of games.
Yes, but like okay,
where
so
it gets more expensive the more you sell.
But that's not the mechanic. The only mechanic of Off-World Trading Company. That's a very, very simple mechanic of just having a price higher. But the whole market economy, the whole dynamics of the market, and other players will manipulate it too. You haven't seen that before.
Yeah, but it's. I mean, that's just the same supply and demand mechanic that you see in other games. Only that in this game, the game is just centered around it.
But that's the innovation.
So the innovation is that now the game just revolves around that.
Callum, what are you saying?
there's plenty of RTS games like Age of Empires and Rise of Nations that have done the whole, the more food you buy, the price of food goes up. But that's like the entire complexity of the market. I think the thing that's really different about Offworld Trading Company is the interaction and the relationship between resources. Because, you know, if you to get glass, you need silicon and you need oxygen and you need power. So then you have to be buying or collecting power. So you have these complex relationships.
Which are also dependent on the price and stuff. Yeah,
I've seen that in other games as well. So
I really wonder about these games that you play that we haven't seen.
Yeah, sure.
Like, what's an example? Just one.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there are all kinds of games where
Like,
it's like food chain, like I know Settlers, for example, right? Where you have food chains.
It's not RTS.
And well, yeah, it is.
Isn't that like
Settlers.
turn-based?
Yeah, it is turn-based.
Well, it technically is an RTS, yeah, you know, but
Turn-based,
still, sure. I haven't seen games that are centered around the supply and demand
That's the point.
mechanic before, but you know, I don't just.
We can move on
I
from
don't
this.
think it's,
Let's do
a
it.
bit of
Okay.
pointless digression, but just to sum up, I think you're just basically saying that it's only supply and demand, but supply and demand is only a fraction of the market complexity. But anyway,
Let's move
so
on. Did you want to finish this?
Yeah. Well, so to continue my point, I was saying that I don't think there's a lot of RTS developers that really know what they're doing, apart from, you know, maybe the odd indie. But I think the only good RTS games we've had recently, you know, really you can say Company of Heroes 2, and even then that has so many issues, as we keep discussing, I keep discussing on our channels. We have StarCraft, which is, you know, it's Blizzard, but I mean StarCraft doesn't really innovate. StarCraft is brilliant, it's a masterpiece, but Blizzard don't innovate RTS. Like StarCraft isn't that different to StarCraft 2 isn't that different to StarCraft 1. Warcraft 3, I guess it has some RPG mechanics, but Blizzard aren't going to innovate, and that's fine. They don't need to.
Blizzard
and then you had a couple of
Blizzard
things
has actually
so
become the new Activision, yeah.
The reason why I'm concerned about RTS is because I don't have faith. I don't have confidence in any RTS studio. If I hear a new RTS game coming out, I go, yeah, I mean, is it going to be good though? Because it's probably just going to be crappy. I'm no longer excited for these new RTS games because I no longer have any confidence in RTS. I mean, in RTS developers. Perhaps, maybe Halo Wars 2, possibly Dawn of War 3. I mean, that's a can of worms as well, which we can talk about later.